Welcome to November's episode of our essay live stream series called African Echoes. I'm joined by guests on a monthly basis. Today is our fourth episode of African Echoes. It's my pleasure to be joined by Nicolas. Welcome, Nicolas.
Thanks, Sean. Good to be here.
Yeah, man. Awesome to have you online. For those of you that know, Nicolas is an award-winning accredited customer experience master, ACXM, and a research professional with over 22 years of research, of a track record spent in communications, customer experience, customer relations, and management. And I look forward to actually asking you a couple of pertinent questions today, Nick. But before I do that, let me just get some admin out of the way. We typically do this African Echo session every once a month on a Thursday, typically at 2 o'clock. It's roughly 50 minutes long. It's streaming on my LinkedIn profile as well as Question Pro's YouTube channel. And please post any questions you've got in the chat. We'd be happy to tackle them as we go along. What are African Echoes? It's essentially informal discussions which we have with our South African clients, partners, and subject matter experts to share some ideas, thoughts, experience, challenges, and everything related to CX and data. So what we will be discussing today is what I believe is a very big topic at the moment is how do you actually maximize your CX investment? How do you show your ROI on it? So for that, I've got Nicolas on the online today, and I think he would probably be give us a very good input into this topic. So my first question, Nicolas, is what are the biggest challenges for CX professionals?
Yeah, well, thanks for the intro, Sean. And ROI is really a sort of like a passion project of mine, so to speak. You ask what one of the biggest challenges are that CX people face. ROI, improving ROI is definitely up there. I don't believe that there are many professionals and organizations out there that have really cracked the ROI nut, so to speak. CX people are generally really good at coming up with the great ideas, coming up with the things that are really going to drive customer satisfaction and drive those scores that we're looking for, and loyalty and happiness and all those really important emotional aspects of customer experience. But many times being able to translate those feelings, those soft things, into rands and cents or dollars and cents in the bank tend to be a little bit more difficult. So, and as a result, customer experience budgets sometimes get slashed because they can't prove that value to the organization in terms of adding money to the bottom line or reducing costs, etc. And CX people find themselves having to really fight to justify their existence. I've seen it in organizations I've worked in. I've seen it in organizations that I've consulted to, where they've had really good ideas, and they are ideas that absolutely work, and really creative ideas. But because they haven't been able to really articulate what it means in a financial term, these ideas sometimes never even saw the light of day, or they were rolled out at great expense, but then weren't able to sort of bring that return on investment that we all hope for. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges for customer experience at the moment.
So what's your advice on tackling some of these issues? I mean, ROI would be one of it, but the other one would be is how do you actually not just, well, show its worth? How would you tackle some of these issues?
I'm unpopular for saying this in many aspects, but customer experience needs a reality check. It needs to be grounded. It needs to be brought down. Far too much of the talk around customer experience, the rhetoric, is very academic and very abstract. It's all about making happy customers and driving loyalty and satisfaction and all these wonderful things, which are super important. You know, without happy customers, we'd have no business. But really, we need to get down to the crux of the matter: is how does a great customer experience creates a sustainable business that can continue to create great customer experiences. And for me, it's threefold. So the first part would be intimately understanding your business, and especially from a journey perspective. So organizations are very good at journey mapping. We'll get a CX person in, or we'll get our CX people into a room and some stakeholders, and we'll build Legos, and we'll throw Post-its up on the wall, and we'll take photos, and then what? Customer experience and journey mapping kind of looks like a little bit of a tick box. Yes, no, we map those journeys. But you need to understand those journeys at an intricate level. You have to understand that each journey has certain trigger points, and each trigger point either makes you money or it costs you money. And by maximizing those points, or those trigger points that make you money, and making those trigger points as pleasurable for your customers to repeat as possible, you're gonna start finding value in those things. So it's about managing your journeys. Your journeys also aren't something that you just do and then leave. They have to evolve over time. You always have to go back to them. You always have to evolve them. You always have to continually improve them. And there's this real need to get to understand your organization on an intimate level through your journeys. The second point is data. And I cannot stress this enough. Good quality data is key to ensure that you understand how those journeys work and where those trigger points are. So it's all interlinked. If you aren't collecting the right type of data, if your data is not clean, if it's not regularly updated, if your data sits in silos and is controlled by different departments and different people in the organization, that is the unfortunately the death knell for many CX projects. So understanding your journeys, having good data to back up those journeys, and then thirdly, this ROI. And I'm sure we'll talk about ROI a little bit later, but you know, there's a lot of customer experience professionals and respectable people in the sort of field talk about the triple crown. So being able to reduce costs, improve efficiency, and drive profit. Those are important for both the organization and for your customers, because from an internal perspective, you need to reduce those costs to service your customers. It's about being able to contain those costs. You need to improve those efficiencies, and by improving the efficiencies, it's a two-way street. You're not only helping your internal processes to be efficient, but you're also helping the process of getting in touch with you or interacting with your services and your products efficient for customers, which makes for happy customers and loyal customers. And then obviously contributing to the bottom line, making those things that make you money enjoyable for customers to repeat, which not only gives you more to invest in those experiences, but also helps your business to carry on. So really, those three things for me are absolute key.
I just want to take you back to what you said in terms of data quality, right? And I think it's such an important point that often gets not really given the value that it should be. But in your opinion, how big of an issue do you think that is across the industry or businesses as a whole?
I think, listen, I think it is a ubiquitous problem. It varies on scale, right? So there are some organizations that I've worked for and consulted to who have data problems, but really good people solving those problems. So they know it's a problem, and they sort of solving it. And you can see it as time progresses, the quality of the data gets better and better, and your intricate understanding of the internals of your organization get better and better over time. And then there are those sort of federated organizations that insist on owning their little piece of real estate and really either share begrudgingly or are so invested in their little sort of empire that to integrate and to share becomes a very time-consuming, very complex, and very expensive exercise. I do think data has become and will be the next massive battleground for customer experience, especially as we start looking at AI tools. We start looking at all the promise that AI is bringing to the table, but AI is also only as good as the data you feed it. Whether you're using a large language model that's publicly available like ChatGPT, or whether you're building your own large language models and the AI that goes around that, to make it a little bit more family friendly, I guess, rubbish in, rubbish out. So data for me is going to be the hot commodity. How you collect it, how you make sure it's consistently good, and how you're using it. We talk, and we're probably going to talk about VOC a little bit later, but VOC is a great example of where data is super important. You can't just put an NPS survey out and think that's our customer data, because it absolutely isn't. There's so much more to it, but I'm sure we'll get to that conversation a little bit later.
So all of these, I mean, obviously you're trying to showcase ROI, but at the end of the day, you need to get senior management buy-in, right? So how do you obtain that buy-in from them?
Every CX person has their aha moment. I've had a few aha moments in the last couple of years. But one aha moment I had recently at one of the big banks was we were presenting a ROI framework, because there was a massive focus on budgets, because the CX team was one of those CX teams that were really good at the big ideas and solving customer problems, but not necessarily being able to justify their existence to the people who are sort of forming the budgets. And ROI is something that I've been working on myself and with various other colleagues throughout my career, as a passion project. And we presented a framework to the CFO of the specific division. And you almost saw his eyes light up because we were talking his language. We weren't using things like loyalty and happiness and whatever, although we know those are important, but that's not the language that the bean counters use. They use dollars and cents or rands and cents. So we translated happiness and loyalty and engagement into customer lifetime value, into cost to acquire, into cost to service, into cost reduction, and all of a sudden it made sense to him. We were able to quantify what happy customers mean. And I think customer experience people need to get really good at speaking boardroom. If they want to get the buy-in of senior management, if they want to get the buy-in of the people who are actually going to be funding their projects. It's a tough thing to do because CX people traditionally are not financial people. They're not people who speak boardroom. They're people who speak creative, abstract. And while that's important, especially in this economic environment that we find ourselves, you find yourself having to really sort of justify in terms of rands and cents or dollars and cents. And I think if you can get to that level, if you can speak boardroom, if you can translate customer happiness into money in the bank, then that is a good first step in getting to where you need to get. And that I think would be the aha moment for a lot of CX people, but also for a lot of financial people.
So, I mean, you've touched on it in your example, but I mean, would that be one way of proving ROI? What would some other ways be of proving ROI?
So, and I'll give you a very basic example. In a call center environment, and specifically maybe a sales environment, you have a cost associated to taking a phone call. And that cost is obviously made up of the seat, the person, their salary, the electricity, the phone system, etc. There's sort of like every time I pick up the phone, there's a cost involved. Now, a pet or a pet hate or a pet peeve of call centers is often repeat callers, because every time somebody has to phone back, it not only creates a bad experience for the customer, but it creates cost for me. As the call center or the call center operator. So getting to understand what are the core reasons for those repeat calls and dealing with those core reasons, there's an instant cost saving, which goes directly to the bottom line by being able to eliminate the repeat calls for that specific reason. And then, and it all circles around back to what I said previously about having good data and understanding your journeys intimately, being able to understand and manage those journeys. Because if you know what your journeys look like, and you know what your processes look like, and you know that your data is good, and you know the number one reason for a repeat call is XYZ, sort out XYZ, and that should reduce the number of repeat calls and reduce the cost associated. It's a very basic example, but it's the easiest example to sort of illustrate that. It depends. In a sales environment, it looks very different to a service environment. It looks very different to a physical environment, a shop front, for argument's sake. It looks very different in a digital environment as well. So there's no cookie cutter approach. There's no one size fits all, but there is a principle of understand your journeys, get good data about your journeys, and then solve the problems that are causing the things that cost you money. It doesn't, when I say it like that, it doesn't sound like rocket science, and I'm probably doing myself an injustice by saying it so simply, but that really is what it is. I always say customer experience is partly science, partly common sense. And if you can get the common sense part of it right, that's half of your battle fought. But unfortunately, sometimes common sense needs a bit of a nudge from people like us.
I'm glad you brought up the journey mapping thing again, and I mean I think it's such a thing which sometimes can go awry, and it's not really what the intended purpose was. So, and obviously in the beginning of a conversation, you were a little bit critical in terms of how it's currently being done by maybe certain institutions or CX experts. But what would your approach be to journey mapping or journey management?
So for me, journey management, okay, so you need to discern between journey management and journey mapping. So journey mapping is that thing that we all do. The post-its on the wall, the workshops, the personas, the service blueprints, all those wonderful things that we do in tools like Miro or whatever tools people use to sort of map.
I think in Zoom these days you can also do it.
Probably. I've even seen people do journey maps in Excel, believe it or not. So that's journey mapping. But journey management is once you've got that map, and once you've got all the necessary detail in that map to understand these are the pain points that make us money. These are the pain points that cost us money. These are the moments of truth that make us money. These are the journeys that get customers to that successful outcome the quickest, etc. Then you can start managing those and going, right, let's take this out. What does it do to the journey? Does it improve it? Does it increase the handling time? Does it eliminate one or more pain points? So that's an ongoing process. Once you've mapped the journey, you manage it. And then you remap the journey to make sure that your management of the journey is doing the thing that you need to do, and it becomes sort of the normal way of doing things. Getting the right people in the room to begin with. It is heartbreaking when you see customer experience people try and do journey mapping when they don't have the right people in the room. Things go missing, information is missed out, key components of the experience can be completely overlooked. So it's really about getting the right people in the room with the right level of knowledge. Then understanding how deep you want to go. You could do a macro journey where you just look at sort of the funnel, awareness, consideration, whatever the case is, whatever that macro journey looks like. Or you could really get detailed and say, right, we want to know exactly every single system, every single process. I like the latter rather than the former, because the latter leaves nothing to chance and it leaves nothing to doubt. And if you have the right people in the room, that is fairly, I'm not going to say easy to do, but straightforward to do. And that also reduces problems later. Where I am critical is where you get a bunch of CX people and marketers and salespeople in the room, and you create a macro journey, and then they consider that the customer journey. Then there's still a lot of exercise to be done after that, running around. Okay, what system goes here? You know, what process informs this outcome, etc. Do it properly the first time, as detailed as you can with the correct people. And that eliminates a lot of problems down the line. It's labor intensive, it's difficult, it's complex, but it will save so much in the long run. And also then that gives you an opportunity to iterate, to improve, continuous improvement, to continually improve on something that is always changing, but you never documented in the first place is incredibly difficult.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's where voice of the customer comes in, right? So that's where a system that measures all of these things and makes sure that you are staying on top of it. But what would your key components be of a successful VOC strategy?
VOC is another one of those things that I'm very unpopular for having an opinion on. Because it's no longer good enough to have one metric. NPS was always the metric. NPS, you know, it was and the tried and tested metric. If our NPS is good, we are doing a good job. Yeah. Then how do you explain the tanking sales? How do you explain the dropping profitability? How do you explain the leaky bucket that is your customer base? CSAT, no, we'll throw some CSAT into the mix. Okay, that's fine, but CSAT can only tell you so much. It can tell you the opinions of a customer, but it doesn't tell you the reality of the situation, especially if, you're only speaking to a small percentage of your customer base. Mm-hmm. So for me, voice of customer really needs to be multifaceted. NPS, CSAT, whatever customer-facing surveys you use, absolutely important. Those are your gauges that you are on the right track. But they are not going to tell you if you are doing the right things for your business and ultimately your customers. You need to have a handle on those internal processes. You need to start building leading and trailing indicators to make sure that you can regression test against these things. So if we do something, how has it impacted the customer experience and what impact did that have on the business? And then ultimately feeding that return on investment framework. We often neglect to look at our employees as a source of VOC. They are our front line. They are the people who deal with customers on a daily basis. They are 90% of the time the people who have the solutions to the problems we have. We need to tap them a lot more. We need to understand the information that they have. How do we tap it? How do we operationalize that? I've spoken a bit about our processes as well, but then there's also an external sort of context. So as much as you can speak to your customers and look at your internal processes, you need to understand the external environment. What are the macros telling you about why customers behave the way they do? Why do customers take up certain products and not other products? Why do customers use certain services in specific ways? Maybe not the way you designed it to be used in the first place. So it really is multifaceted, and the key to that is finding a way. And again, like ROI, there is no one size fits all approach. But how do you visualize all of these things in a single place to make sure that the people who are making the decisions can have one look, one screen, or maybe one or two screens, and then be able to make decisions, well-informed decisions based on that information, that no rock is left unturned. For me, yeah, voice of customer, I think, is wholly underutilized, because it is not designed to take everything into account. But to take everything into account is complex. So how do you do that in a way that is sort of digestible? The second part of that is, what do you actually do with that information? So a lot of organizations will spend a lot of money on tools and consultants, and they'll spend months and months building a really rock solid VOC framework that gets them all this information. But then how are they using it? Is it a report that's circulated once a month and gathers dust in people's inboxes? Or are you looking to answer specific questions from the sales department, the marketing people, the PR and comms people, the service operations people, the product people who aren't customer facing, but who are building the things that you are selling or using, etc.? You can gather all the great information, but it's about how you operationalize it as well. So I suppose, multifaceted, and then how do you use it, and how do you operationalize that, and how do you iterate on it as well? Because your voice of customer program should not stand still. If you are asking the same questions today as you did last year and the year before, and the feedback that you're seeing, the reports every month are saying the same thing over and over again. Actually, it's actually a running joke in some of the places that I've worked in the past, where you could almost predict what the report was going to say, because it never changed. It never changed. So either you're not doing the right things, or you're asking the wrong things. It's iterate.
My last question to you would be let's assume we're speaking to someone that's relatively new in customer experience, and now he's working at this business, and they're thinking about maybe implementing something like a VOC. What would your advice be to someone like that in terms of how to get it across the line? To what should he be focusing on to show ROI, or not ROI, but how to get that stakeholder buy-in?
I'm a big fan of raw, unfiltered feedback. And one of the most sort of raw and unfiltered feedback sort of sessions that I can remember was I was at a large organization that used to have these management forums once a year, where all the top managers, so sort of heads of department and up, would be gathered in a hall, a venue, and they would be taken through what the past year looked like, what the next sort of 6 to 12 months is going to look like. Here's the organizational strategy, etc. And the one year we decided to have a focus group in the middle of that forum. So we got customers, sat them around a table. We got a really good facilitator to facilitate a focus group. And the brief to them was, ignore everybody around you, be honest. And there were some very choice things said about the organization, about the products, about the service. There were specific people in the organization that were called out during the focus group, one of them being the chief operating officer at the time. And it was hard for them to listen. But it spurred the organization into action, to actually see real people saying these things. It's one thing to see a tweet or a piece of feedback in a PDF report, but it's another thing to stand there and listen to somebody, a person, talking about the very product and service that you work on. It hits home. So I think that is probably one of the most powerful tools available to anybody wanting to start this and looking for buy-in. And I can tell you that COO at the time was in the audience, and afterwards he stood up, and the person who called him out, he said, "Hi, I am so and so, and thanks to you, I am changing things tomorrow." And it did. It kicked off one of the biggest customer experience transformation projects the organization had ever seen. That got buy-in from all levels, right the way down from refreshments officers right up to C-suite. And it also saw a huge return on investment for the organization as well. A massive program got kicked off that had very little sort of budget, but saw a massive uplift in return on investment as a result of people all of a sudden taking personal accountability for that experience. So I think in a very, if you have nothing else going for you, get real people in front of your executives and get them to speak their minds. And I can promise you that hits home like nothing else.
Yeah, I think it's very powerful. I mean, it could go both ways in terms of how receptive people are to feedback, but I think it's a good illustration.
We won't give out boxing gloves, we'll sort of draw the line there, but yeah, it really is very powerful. People often overlook real interaction in favor of a dashboard or in favor of a report because it's easy. But yeah, it's get in the faces of your customers, man. That's the most powerful way to do it.
I agree. Listen, Nicolas, it's all the time we have. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you for the audience for watching. And yeah, I mean, I look forward to hearing more from you. And Nicolas will also be speaking next year at our X Day in January. So yeah, looking forward to learning more from you. Thanks, Nicolas.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Looking forward to it. Thank you. Thanks for the invite.